Welcome to May's Writing Haven. Welcome to another book review. This is the book I read in the first half of August, Old Soul by Susan Barker. This book was published this year, January of 2025. It's categorized as literary horror. It's a standard size book around 330 pages. Let me read the synopsis for you. The historian meets under the skin in this searingly provocative literary horror about one woman's determination to stay alive at any terrifying cost. In Osaka, two strangers, Jake and Mariko, miss a flight and over dinner discover they've both brutally lost loved ones whose paths crossed with the same beguiling woman no one has seen since. Following traces this mysterious person left behind, Jake travels from country to country, gathering chilling testimonies from others who encountered her across the decades. A trail of shattered souls that eventually leads him to Theo, a dying sculptor in rural New Mexico who knows the woman better than anyone and might just hold the key to who or what she is. Part horror, part Western? Part thriller. Old Soul is a fearlessly bold and genre-defying tale about mortality and free will and one man's quest to bring a centuries-long chain of human devastation to an end. Sounds interesting. I usually read synopsis of books and struggle to find any interest or desire to read them. Synopsis are usually rough for me, so I usually try not to be too critical and I will just go straight to reading some sample pages. But this was one book after I read the synopsis. That was all I needed to be so excited and ready for the sample pages. Like this, I'm already intrigued and want to read this. I think the premise of it is so gripping. If you know anything about the content I post on this channel, where I have my vlog talking about my book that I'm writing. I have one book review besides this one at this point, and a few other chatty videos about writing where I talk about I'm a slow writer, I'm a slow reader. But I got through this book really fast. Despite the negatives that I'm going to say about this book, I was able to get through it really fast. It's easy to read. But unfortunately, despite the intriguing premise, the choice of structure and POV killed what could have been an addictive page turner. I mean, yes, I was turning the pages really fast, but a lot of it was because I wanted to find something to pull me in again. I was just desperately searching for that. So it wasn't an addictive page turner in the sense of it pulling me into the narrative, and it was a page turner in the sense of like, come on already, there's gotta be more going on here, because the setup was just so expertly done that I was trusting the author for something else to be there when it started falling flat. And unfortunately, I never found that again. So yeah, the setup is really awesome. Jake and Mariko are the two characters that you get introduced to in the first few chapters. How they meet is really interesting. They both missed their flights, so they're both standing there dealing with this agent in different ways, trying to figure out some way to talk themselves onto the flight that's still there, but they won't let them board. The beginning chapters of this, you're in the head of Jake, and you're getting a lot of characterization of him and a lot of characterization of how Mariko is perceived by him. And the perceptions, the writing is so good. So the way they're dealing with this agent, I really liked the line. In Jake's head, he's thinking, By now, my heart rate and anxiety levels were returning to normal, and I was resigned to the change in travel itinerary. It was my own fault for misreading the boarding pass after all. The other passenger, talking about Mariko, however, small though she was, looked ready to throw some weight around. Though her demeanor was poised, her eyes flashed entitlement. It's just one example of the way the Mariko character is built up through the eyes of Jake. They see each other after missing this flight. They randomly run into each other again at the grocery store. And they both have bonded over this experience of missing their flight and trying to argue with the flight attendant. That scene ends by Mariko saying, "I'm staying at the Stargate Hotel just next door. The restaurant there seems to have decent reviews. You can join me for dinner if you want." So they have dinner. I'll just read you some more descriptions of how this characterization of Mariko through the eyes of Jake is just so expertly done. She was graceful and straight-backed as a dancer, and I found myself attempting to keep my elbows off the table to pull myself out of my habitual slouch. Just so interesting how just being in this woman's presence is making him feel like he has to have better posture and better mannerisms, keeping his elbows off the table. It just says so much about how Jake is feeling around this character without, and just saying it in such an interesting way that I just find very refreshing. I find this type of characterization and this type of writing is desperately needed in books nowadays. I find those just this beautiful characterization like that is just missing in a lot of books that I read anymore. I just really appreciated the writing in that way. So they're eating and they're talking. They're not even talking about their loved ones that have died or anything at this point. They're just having a conversation that has led Mariko to start talking about the people she works with. And there's this really interesting piece of choreography that says, and again, you're still in the head of Jake. In the glass. So they're sitting, it's just in all these glass windows they're sitting by in the restaurant. In the glass, I watched her reflection speak. So interesting. So she's looking over away from him, and it just brings such a visual in your head of like someone pensively thinking about something, looking over off into the glass, and you're in the head of this character watching her say these things through a reflection. I just loved that visual. And another bit of characterization here, Jake asks her, "You aren't hungry?" And Mariko says, "I stop when I'm 70% full." Wow, that's very disciplined. "I have to be disciplined," she said. "No meat, 8 hours of sleep, and Pilates every morning." "You don't ever slack off?" "No." Later on, they go to a bar and have a drink. Mariko confesses, "I haven't been feeling myself today," she admitted. "I'm never so disorganized that I'm late for a flight." They get drunk together, and Jake helps her back to her hotel room, and that's where it starts getting really interesting. Mariko starts opening up about her brother, Hiroji, who died. At this point, it's been 11 years since her brother died. But on the night he died, Hiroji called her at 3 a.m. And I mean, they hadn't spoken in years. She did pick up the phone call at 3 a.m. And when she did, her brother had told her he'd entered the mind of a higher dimensional God. Already it's just like, what? It's getting super weird. Weird is interesting, right? It's getting mysterious. Jake says, "A what?" "A higher dimensional God. He said he'd seen every moment of his life from conception to death. He'd seen us sharing our mother's womb as fetuses." Oh yeah, they're twins. Her and her brother were twins. He's saying this over a phone call the night before he dies. And so Mariko's still talking about her brother. Hiroji told me this god had marked him out, that it had moved all of his insides about so they weren't his anymore. And that's when we find out Mariko's brother and Jake's friend both died after meeting the same woman. Both of their dead loved ones shared one unmistakable connection, a unique and mysterious symptom found after death. Of all of their internal organs being reversed, switched around. This setup is so amazing, so intriguing, so mysterious. I just want to read to you how this presents. So Mariko's still talking. She's still on the phone with her brother. And she's telling Jake further what she is hearing her brother say after asking him if he's having a psychotic break or on drugs or whatever. She goes on to say, Hiroji told me this god had marked him out, that it had moved all of his insides about so they weren't his anymore. Then he said that I was marked out too, because we were twins and his flesh was my flesh. This woman did show up the next day and buzzed her intercom, and she could see this woman through the video of who was trying to get buzzed into her apartment. Remembering her brother's warning, Mariko hung up the video call. And then she received a call about Hiroji being dead. Post-mortem, they found something strange about her brother's body, that, just as he has said, all of his internal organs were found the wrong way around, reversed. Jake is already feeling strange because it's already hitting some of the strange happenings that had happened to his friend Lena. So they're sharing this very strange, unique connection here. Mariko, I said, the things your brother said the last time you spoke to him, that something was moving his insides about, that they weren't his anymore? I've heard it before. My friend Lena died in 2011 too. And she was saying similar things in the weeks before. And there was a woman like the one who came to your door. Jake asked, desperate for details because he doesn't know what happened to his friend Lena. Do you have any contact details for Hiroji's friends? Anyone who knew him in Kyoto around the time he died? Leave me alone. Leave my dead brother alone. Please just go away. So that's where Jake and Mariko leave off, and he finally gets on a different flight the next day, and Mariko's not even on it. Just before he's getting on his flight, the gate agent hands him an envelope. We know the envelope is from Mariko, and there's a memo paper in it that gives Jake a name and a telephone number. So obviously he has his first clue about where he's going to start with this investigation into his friend Lena's death. And that's how this book is structured, around Jake going to all these people who have had similar encounters with this woman, who have had loved ones that died in the similar way, and he's going around the world basically talking to these people that have had these same encounters. And what would have been so satisfying, as if these two, Mariko and Jake, together had traveled the world trying to find out what happened to their loved ones, because the authors nailed their intros, nailed the character development. It would have been so interesting to see these two work together to unravel this mystery. And as stated, the author nailed setting up the mystery with just that one mention of that strange symptom of their internal organs being reversed. That sucked me in. Unfortunately, it just goes downhill from there once this investigation starts because Mariko and Jake disappear. All that wonderful mysterious setup in the beginning chapters deflates completely in the very next chapter. That if I had completed reading my sample pages, I probably would not have bought the book. The events surrounding their loved ones' deaths, this strange woman. The mystery was set up in such an intriguing way that you want it to unfold slowly. You want each bit to be untangled in a satisfying way. What happens and why it deflates so suddenly and quickly is the very next chapter, you immediately get inside the head of the mysterious woman that the entire book is set up to investigate. And what I mean is, immediately after Mariko and Jake meet, and immediately after he gets the memo with the name and number of the person that's going to set off the investigation into this woman, you immediately get into the POV of this mysterious woman. Switching immediately to her POV deflated the mystery. And so what happens, and the biggest fail of this book, is the overall structure of it. So the structure is what's called testimonies of Jake hearing other stories from people who have encountered this woman. That is layered with the POV of this woman in present time as she is preparing to take her next victim. But even as Mariko has completely disappeared, even though you're following Jake around to hear all these different testimonies of his investigation, you don't get to stick with Jake. You don't get anything from him. You go into the POV of the other victims, and it goes into those victims' present time, present day, into all of these separate vignettes that are called testimonials. And because the ritual this lady, this strange woman, enacts is the same every single time, what you have are all these new POVs of people who are not really characters in this book. And you already know exactly what is going to happen to them. Every single testimonial, every single vignette, the exact same thing happens. It's boring. Boring. And because this ritual is lived out each time with new people over and over and over and over again, you not only know what is going to happen in the testimonials or vignettes, you also already know what is going to happen in the present day POV of the strange woman with her new victim. You already know what's going to happen because each vignette is a solid piece. You get it from beginning to end, beginning to where the strange happenings start until where their death happens. And they meet this woman and then their death happens. So it's a solid vignette. And then you go into the POV of the strange woman who is leading up to her process with this new victim. Then you go into another vignette, beginning to end, go back to present day POV with this strange woman and her new victim. So it's just like you've already seen the entire thing play out with the first vignette. So when it goes to the POV of the strange woman with her new victim, you're like, well, I already know what's going to happen to this new victim. And then it's just goes into another vignette of the same thing that happens. It's just so boring and repetitive. While you're in her POV, you do get details about the ritual. You get like the rules of the ritual, why she's doing it, etc. But they are given so early on that the buildup isn't there. And the details are not interesting. It's just not interesting. What is actually happening behind it all is not interesting. It's the after effects that's interesting. It's what happens to these people as a result of the ritual that is bizarre and entirely carries the book's mysterious pull. But as I've stated, that only works the first time around. After it's repeated over and over, it's just repetition that you're flipping through and feeling bored, looking for something new that is never given. So it's like I was flipping through these pages so quickly, trying to find something new, trying to find something interesting. So quickly, within the first quarter of this book, the mystery is gone. The tension is gone. The characters have been replaced by vignettes of people you don't need to be in the head of. The POV of the strange woman clearly explains what she's doing and why. All that's left is the ending. Because through all this repetition, it's just getting boring, and you're flipping through it, just wanting to see how it ends at that point. Because there are a lot of testimonials. There's a lot of them, and they're all the same. So you're hanging your hat on the ending at this point. And the ending was flatter than a month-old 2-liter of pop. Horrible. Something to know about this book, it has no dialogue markers, and it took me a minute to get used to that. But after a chapter or two, I quickly got used to it and found myself liking it. So if that is something that bothers you, like you need dialogue tags, it's going to drive you nuts. All of the dialogue is just there, like mixed in with the narrative, but somehow it works and it's done well. And so my main complaints are the structure. And the structure didn't fail on just one point, but two. And my other complaints are the POV, tension, and the ending. Tension was dropped. Tension went flat very quickly. And the ending was not good. So that is Old Soul, what I think about Old Soul by Susan Barker. Great premise, great setup, horrible structure, horrible POV choices, great build-up that just quickly falls flat, and an ending that was just as flat. It was a great idea that just wasn't executed properly. It's just the first quarter that's amazing, and it is so amazing that you do want to keep reading because you trust the author to write amazing lines, to have amazing characterization. You trust that there's going to be something else there, but it's just not. So it's kind of like a tease. The fact that just only the first quarter of this book being so amazing that it led me into reading it to the entire end should tell you just how great the setup is. Because it did keep me reading to the entire end, but there was just nothing there after the first quarter of the book, unfortunately. Thanks for watching. Come back again for book reviews, vlogs, and other writing chat.